In this section, we're going to talk about the scarcity principle. So by the end of this lesson, you'll know what the scarcity principle is and why it matters in your interview process. So the scarcity principle. So this is a social psychological principle from 1975. It started out as an economic principle that scarcity, as you can imagine, draws demand and it draws that people value something more. That was in the 1930s that came up. But in 1975, it was discovered that it was also a social psychological principle because people will value items more when those items are more difficult to obtain. Now, you think, okay, supply and demand, I get it, but how does that apply to the interview process? Well, I want you to think about the TV shows, The Bachelor and Bachelorette. Have you ever watched those shows and wondered why did they got selected because there might be a match, and they go on the show and then they just go crazy and go all in on winning the competition versus what the show's supposed to be about, which is matching with a mate. And I've often asked, why don't they step back and say, should I be in a relationship with this person versus I have to win, I have to win, I have to be a part of this, I have to win the competition. And in a lot of ways, that's what the interview process does to you. It starts by weeding down a pool of candidates based on applications to where you are selected as a possible match, and then you're thrown into a situation that becomes competitive. Whether the company wants to create it as competitive or not, you become competitive and so glom onto it, you stop asking yourself, should I want this job? And you become, I have to win this job. So I bring this principle to your attention to make sure you understand that the same thing that happens to the Bachelor contestants in the TV show can happen to you in the interview process if you're not careful and watch yourself throughout and make sure you stop and ask, should I work at this company? Is this a good place for me? To make sure you flip this around and make it as much about you interviewing the company as they're interviewing you. And if you don't do that, you get caught up, and what ends up happening is as the interview candidate, you start going all in that you have to win this, you have to be competitive and win this situation, win this job, versus asking yourself, should I be in this job? And that can be very confusing for people. So in conclusion, my goal here is just to make you familiar with the scarcity principle so that as you get into the process, you can call time out and pull back and look at the landscape and make sure that this is a job for you and a place you want to work. And we'll talk about how to score that in later segments.